Tony, we ready? You know, Mr. Bailey is a farmer. He likes to do things right on time. We good on sound, everybody? Good? All right, Tony, cue me when you're ready. We're good. All right, thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning here at our state capitol. Darren Bailey and I are I wish to say we were excited to be here. It's a depressing scene that we're at because we need to be talking once again about ethics reform. And later on today, the House will be having its first committee meeting regarding HB 5613, which is a bill that would create transparency in Illinois governments, directly talking about NGOs or nonprofits. A lot of times when people say NGO, people's face go blank because they don't really know what it is. It's basically just a third-party subcontractor. Charity or another company that's doing a job that the state government doesn't do well or doesn't have the resources to be able to do it. But for far too long, these agencies have been taking advantage of us because there has been little to no transparency. Under GATA, the Grant Accountability Transparency Act doesn't go nearly far enough to give us the insight and understanding of how Illinois taxpayer dollars are being spent. So this bill would provide that any nonprofit, any NGO, any third-party contractor that takes $10,000 or more from a government agency or 20% of their total revenue would be subject to the Freedom of Information Act. This seems like it's common sense legislation. Why shouldn't we know how our money is being spent here in Illinois? If the library board in Palatine or the school board or legislature or police department or any government agency in Illinois is subject to FOIA requests, why shouldn't those that are receiving our taxpayer dollars join them in that requirement? You know, Governor Pritzker just did a little political ploy where he, was saying we're going to have a rollback of taxes for school supplies. So I like to use this analogy. If the Illinois Department of Education decided to give out a $500,000 grant to offer free school supplies to those kids that need it the most, they would most likely use an NGO or a nonprofit in order to execute that program. After that money leaves the Illinois Department of Education, there's zero transparency in it. How that money is being allocated, how it's being spent, when they get a report back under GATA, it's only top level line. It would say something similar of $400,000 of the $500 was spent on supplies, $50,000 was spent on, administration, $50,000 was spent on distribution of these supplies. That would not give us any insight. Did we overpay for these school supplies? Who was the administration that we did it? In the example of Representative Carol Ammons, which my running mate is going to talk about after me, she made sure that those nonprofit organizations and those NGOs hired her own daughter and enriched her own family. Do we know how many kids this actually affected? They might say it affected 10,000 kids that got the benefit of this, but we don't actually know. By opening up the books, by requiring them to be subject to the Freedom of Information Act, it would give two things. One, transparency in how Illinois dollars are being spent. And number two, if used correctly, would grow the trust that Illinois does not have with its constituents and taxpayers. If they could say, you know what, this money was spent right, it was spent efficiently, that level of trust would grow, and then we could expand upon more and more programs. $18.5 billion is spent through Illinois coffers on grant systems here in Illinois. Some of it comes from the federal government, some of it comes from our general treasury, but that's almost over a third of how much our annual budget is at this inflated $56 billion budget. So this is a program that just makes common sense, that gives an opportunity to build trust and transparency, and I implore the members of the House behind me to approve it and bring it out of the Rules Committee and get it to a floor vote. I'm going to turn it over to Darren Bailey now to talk about some other integrity issues.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for being here today. We're here, obviously, because we have a corruption and an ethics problem in Illinois. Right now, we have two members of the legislature who are accused of behaviors that are unbecoming of our high office, and that is unacceptable. Carol Ammons is facing a 10-count federal indictment involving allegations of wire fraud, misuse of campaign funds, lying to federal investigators, and a scheme involving state grant money that went to family members. Then you have former state representative Harry Benton, who was found by the Legislative Inspector General to have engaged in a pattern of sexual harassment involving at least 3 women. Speaker Chris Welch knew about the first complaint in 2023, yet his political operation later spent $1.4 million helping Benton win re-election. More complaints obviously have followed before Benton finally resigned. Sadly, these are not isolated political problems. In the last 25 years, more than 100 Democrats, ranging from governor, Congress, to legislators, aldermen, and county commissioners, have been indicted for crimes committed. Ammons joins Mike Madigan, Sandoval, Link, Jackson, and others who make up the long list of Democrats who have been indicted for misusing their office for personal gain. This is not just a culture of corruption that has been enabled through indifference. This is a systematic failure of leadership at the highest levels of government. Illinoisans have every right to demand high standards of conduct from their elected officials. They absolutely should expect honesty, integrity, and accountability from the people entrusted with their tax dollars. Instead, they continue to see allegations of corruption, harassment, secrecy, and political protection. In our system of government, people who are accused of crimes are innocent until they're proven guilty. Under our laws, Rep. Ammons has the right to defend herself in court, but as a public official, the people of Illinois also have the right to demand answers. They deserve to know the truth about the allegations surrounding Rep. Ammons. They also deserve to know what Speaker Welch knew and when he knew it. He may defend how he handled the allegations against Benton, but the public has the right to ask why his political operation spent $1.4 million protecting that suit after he apparently knew about the first complaint. Those are fair questions, and the people of Illinois deserve honest answers. These questions are not about scoring political points. We're here to get answers about whether protecting politicians and maintaining power have somehow become more important than protecting people and preserving the public trust. Serving in public office should not descend into an opportunity for personal benefit, and it should never provide protection from accountability. Where is J.B. Pritzker? J.B. Pritzker says there is more to learn about the Harry Benton situation. He wants to pin Donald Trump's every word and action onto his political opponents. And meanwhile, one of the top leaders in his own party and in his own state, I might add, is engaged in one of the worst cover-up jobs that we've seen in a long time. And he is silent. Silence is not leadership, J.B. The people of Illinois deserve transparency, accountability, and a government worthy of their trust. And with the Darren Bailey, Aaron Del Mar governorship, that's exactly what you will get. Thank you very much. Questions?
As governor, you have the authority to sign a bill or veto a bill that the legislature gives you. Beyond that, what authority do you have?
Well, speaking to the public and getting the word out is exactly what I need to do. Getting the political divide away. People of Illinois, this is a 90-10 issue. People of Illinois want this. They deserve it. They'll get it when I work across the aisle to make this happen.
The Benton situation has renewed a lot of conversation about if there's appropriate systems in place to deal with sexual harassment. I'm just curious from your end, what is your campaign's policy if such a case were to arise and be brought to you as an allegation of sexual harassment?
Well, we deal with it immediately. We let the people go, and we address it, investigate it, and find out what's going on immediately.
I can tell you what we won't do also. We won't give the Chicago Public Schools $150 million to try to get support from Chicago state reps so we can keep a speakership. Everybody knows that's exactly what the play was. Nobody was talking about funding education in Chicago until Chris Welch was brought up on this investigation. All of a sudden now he wants to start pushing for $150 million that are spending to bail out Chicago Public Schools because he knows that he needs to get his African American caucus in the city of Chicago behind him if he wants to keep a speakership. I mean, nobody's fooling anybody.
Aaron, you said at today's hearing on the bill that you have been supportive of, but this hearing is about NLN specifically. They're not going to talk about legislation at all. see how this hearing, obviously the first one likely going to be blocking a lot of questions from the attorney's perspective. Both like to see done, and are both of you calling for Ammons to resign as well?
Well, we're 100% asking her to resign, right? She does have due process that's entitled to her under our Constitution on Illinois law, but she should resign and get out of the way. If she is found to be not guilty and cleared of all this, she certainly can run again. But two things we're looking for. Number one is where's J.B. Pritzker at? He's the governor of Illinois. He is the leader of the party both in the House and also in the political spectrum. He's the number one donor to the Democratic Party of Illinois. He should be the one that's sitting up here having the press conference, not Darren Bailey and I. So that's number one. Number two is on with this issue of ethics. People have been talking about this for decades. This is nothing new. But nobody's actually done anything about it. That needs to change. And Carol Ammons not only showing us the corruption there, she's given us a roadmap of how they use member initiative to go and push money to their own groups to self-enrich, right? This is just opening the door that we're jamming our foot through right now to take a look at every other one of the members that have $1 million going to their own districts and the $3 million for Illinois state senators that are only Democrats. Think about that for a second. All of our Republican state representatives and state senators, they don't get any member initiative. But every one of their constituents pays the same taxes we all pay. This is the most corrupt system ever, and it needs to change. And it starts with being able to FOIA each one of these NGOs, how they're spending, because we would have known that if we would have FOIA'd the group that she gave the money to, we would have known that her daughter was an employee. We have known how much was going over there, how they were spending it. They cover it up because there's no transparency and there's no daylight.
Right. Right.
Darren, speaking of ethics, I know the other night in Lockport, you talked about how, if you were elected, of course, you'd be facing this enormous supermajority from the House and Senate. But you think that you can maybe overcome that by showing, the mutual respect there, obviously, listening and so on and so forth. Does that sound like wishful thinking and being easier said than done when it comes to the ethics issue? Because Democrats have been resistant to the past meaningful ethics over the last several years. How would you push for ethics with one as governor? Even though at that point you still have to overcome supermajorities among Democrats in the House.
The people of Illinois are ready for this. They're tired of this nonsense. So I come along and create this verbiage. I mean, let's face what winning Illinois on November 3rd is going to bring. It's going to bring a shock to this state. People are going to wake up. They're going to take notice. And I do believe that people from the other side of the aisle, when I invite them, we can come together and we can start this dialogue. And I'm excited to see what becomes of this as we go from there. It's something that we've been talking about for years, and this corruption has to end. People need to be held accountable.
Jeremy, to that same question, I want to add this. There's a big group of female state representatives right now that may not totally like everything that Darren Bailey and I stand for and agree with us on a lot. But I guarantee you they agree with us right now on what's happening on creating an environment where women aren't afraid to work in the building behind me. They may not like Aaron Delmar's personality or Darren Bailey's whatever, but they will work with us right now because they know that this is not a safe environment, and this is the second time it has come from the very, very top.
Now, you talk about unethical lawmakers. Is there a way to make unethical people ethical? Or do voters need to send better people here?
Voters need to send better people here. Accountability and transparency will do that. When we come together and work, shine light on this, and show the people of Illinois what greater thing other than tax relief and safety and fixing our schools. What greater first steps can we take in Illinois with a new governor than to bring transparency and accountability to their own elected officials?
Now, the Ammons indictment, some of her supporters said that this is just revenge for reparations. And one of Welch's supporters put up a photo of Atticus Finch and his defendant, his client. The client was the only black guy in the room. That's from To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a movie. And I don't think Welch was supposed to be Atticus Finch. What do you think of this racial argument where this is apparently being painted that way?
It's absolute nonsense, and it's a diversion, and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to stop.
someone that would go through training each year. Was it enough back then? And obviously, there's calls for change now. What's the least that was wrong with training back then?
It's not enough. It's a joke. You set up behind a computer. You can answer the questions however you want to and check the box and say you went through training. But no, real life is accountability. It's transparency. And the people of Illinois, they're ultimately responsible for this as we start electing men and women of integrity to get this nonsense out of the way and start truly representing the people. That's what's missing. The people are the actual, the judge. I have no problem with training. Somebody may see something, read something, understand something that they didn't realize. But it's obviously not working even now today.
And here's the thing, on this legislation, that's negotiable. If we need to bring the limit up, because we don't want to exclude any nonprofit from joining and being a good vendor because they're worried about compliance, they're worried about, being harassed, like many elected officials are through FOIA requests. So we're willing to talk to them about, hey, what's the threshold? Is it 10,000, 25,000? It's not a magical number because we want good vendors. We want good people and good organizations that want to help build Illinois, and we don't want to exclude them. But we also want them to have transparency. And again, this is a prime example of how without transparency, crime, corruption, and fraud can go rampant. So let's just have some common sense solutions, right? If you've got nothing to hide and we can do it in a responsible way, I don't think anybody should be opposed to it.
Obviously, you and I talked about this idea just a few weeks ago. I did talk to both campaigns afterwards, and they said the idea for the FOIA requirement would be unconstitutional. Your thoughts on that?
Well, no, if you do it in a limited scope, right? Because look, if you're a company and you're competitive and you're doing work on behalf of the state, you don't want one of your competitors to be able to FOIA your secret recipes or anything like that. But you could say anything that has to do with these tax dollars that you're receiving, if it's $10,000, if it's $25,000, it's $100,000, whatever that might be, it's limited to that scope. There's many people that send FOIA requests at every level of government that are nonsense, and they just push them back and say this is not FOIA-able request, right? You can't get people's medical information. You can't get people's human resource information. All of that would all be excluded because that's usual and customary under FOIA requests. But if you're getting our money, you should be able to see how it's getting spent. I don't think that's unreasonable by any standard.
How about we're spending on other things that aren't using the state grant money? Should that be something to FOIA too?
Can you repeat that one more time?
If they're spending money using maybe their donations and other money that's not coming from the state, should that also be something?
100%. Look at Carol Ammons. She's got a kickback scheme, which breaks my heart because she's got her staff that have worked with her. She's got her daughter and this other one. I mean, I'm a father. This would break my heart if my daughter was implemented in something like this. This kind of stuff should never happen. But everybody in the legislature and everybody in the building behind me knows nobody's looking. Look at Jesse Jackson Jr., him and his wife that went to prison. Their daughter was left at home. They had to have prison sentences that butt up to each other so they can live their family. That's heartbreaking, not only for them, for the people of Illinois, but nobody was looking at their spending. The Illinois Board of Elections is not looking at nearly enough. They don't have nearly enough power, and they can't do the job they need to be doing to keep Illinois transparent and make sure there's not waste, fraud, and corruption.
Darren, question. Governor Pritzker has been making some comments about some of the people that are supporting you. Do you have a comment on that?
One more time, Tony.
Governor Pritzker has been making some comments about some people that are supporting you.
J.B. Pritzker called me a racist, and now he goes after my opponents. J.B. Pritzker is a jackass. He needs to stop with the personal assassinations, the character assassinations, and he needs to start governing Illinois. Enough is enough. I don't know where J.B. Pritzker's been, but he sure as heck hasn't been where I've been the last several months and the last several years. Too many people are hurting in Chicago. They cannot afford to live there. They're burning their tax statements because they can't pay them. And now many of them are going to be losing their homes. Those are the people I'm standing with and I'm standing for, and that's probably a good place to end this. God bless you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everybody.